What led me to become an entrepreneur was that I got to do stuff that I really enjoyed, and there was just enough money to keep me going. And since I wasn't doing it for the money, one of the things I do say about perfection and about getting it just right is that to a lot of people, they need to do it perfectly, right?
The way that I share how to approach complex projects in the high-tech world. Take the project, divide it in sub-projects, divide it again, every and single sub-projects, divide it until you understand exactly how to do that.
Listen to watch YouTube videos, we watch online documentaries, we read newspapers, all this sort of stuff, but free has a power.
Okay, hello everybody. Today we are our first invitee on our podcast, Make Tech Work. And I'm very thrilled to welcome Claus Raasted, if I pronounce it well, keynote speaker, best-selling author, and mastermind behind the College of Extraordinary Experiences. Klaus is renowned for his energetic talks and hands-on strategies for turning ideas into action, especially action. With experience coaching at McKinsey and authoring over 46 books, I'd like to know about that, 46 books, Klaus helps people unlock creativity, innovate fearlessly, and quickly navigate complexity. Let's dive into this great conversation. Klaus, would you like to add something to this short introduction of you?
I think that you hit it right on the nail, Steve. You made me sound much better than I could, so let's just keep it.
Mo, would you like to say something about Klaus? You know him for a while.
Yeah, for me, the experience that I had with Klaus during his podcast is he's such a creative individual, such a creative mind, and super grateful to have you, Klaus. Thank you so much for the time today. And I think our audience is going to love the content today because of your creativity, because of your mind. And by the way, your tips, they worked.
Happy to hear. Happy to hear.
Thank you. All right, Steve.
Something that you created lately, which kind of an experiment, and it's a new book that you give for free. It's free, and you can download it. You can access it from different medium. I saw it on LinkedIn. I downloaded it. I looked at it, and it's called The Little Book of Getting Shit Done. Gift Experiment. Quick thing on my side, my Myers-Briggs personality says that I'm a getting the shit done guy as well. So I'm glad to see that in your title, by the way. So one of the things that is very interesting and one of the best lines in the book, in my opinion, and maybe others' opinion if they read it, and we recommend to read it, is done is better than perfect. And this is something that in my end, being an engineer, being like on detail stuff, I'm always working on. I get the shit done, but I always go maybe sometimes a bit too far in the details. That's what Mo tells me. So I'm working on that. So go ahead and explain a bit what is done is better than perfect for our audience. Klaus, please.
So thank you for that, Steve. And first of all, I think it's fair to say that a lot of people say this, right? This is not one of my brilliant insights that done is better than perfect or perfect is the enemy of good or whatever you want to say. Plenty of people say this. I'm definitely one of them. One of the things I do say about perfection and about getting it just right is that to a lot of people, they need to do it perfectly, right? It needs to be as good as it can be. The painting or the shoe or the dinner or the presentation or the whatever it is. But that's a moving target. That's something that changes, right? If you look at what you're good at today or what Mo's good at today, and you look at yourself 10 years ago, there are some things where you haven't changed. You're just as good or just as bad. There are other things where you are miles better than you were. There might even be things you're worse at. So that changes. And the thing about perfectionism is that that is almost always related to what is possible with you, not related to what is possible outside of you. So if you say that for me, this painting must be perfect, you're saying it must be as good as I can make it, not as good as it can be, because there are people who are better than you, probably, like unless you are, for some odd reason, you are the best violinist in the world, or the best shoemaker in the world, or the best painter in the world, or the best Excel builder in the world, then there's going to be somebody who's better. So whenever you say it has to be perfect, you mean perfect according to me, what I can do at this moment in time, not perfect according to some objective standard. And that's where, to me, it gets destructive, right? That there are some things I do very badly. And even on my best days, it's not good. When I sing, even on my good days, it is not that good. And there are other things where I am actually very, 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 very good. And even on my worst days, I am very good.
Mhm.
So in some cases, if I was looking at delivering the perfect speech, well, then I'm looking at what can I do? I'm not looking at how good is it, right? I can never sing the perfect song because I'm simply a bad singer. I can, even on my worst days, deliver a kick-ass presentation because, with no false modesty, I'm actually pretty good on a stage. And I think that when people talk about making it the best it can be, making it perfect, they are almost always talking about in relation to what they can do, not in relation to what is possible. And I think that's where it goes wrong. Judge it against reality, not against yourself, because it's gonna lead to pain. It's gonna lead to suffering. And it's not necessarily gonna be better. I am better on my worst days on a stage than many people are at their best days. On the other hand, I am worse on my best days than many people are at their worst days. So it becomes meaningless to talk about doing it perfect. Let's see if we can do it well instead.
Yeah, no, well said. And I can relate to two books that I read. One of them is Don't Aim for Perfection, Aim for the Best Performance You Can Do. So that goes along with what you said. And the other one, I think it was from Adam Grant. The other one was from MJ DeMarco, and this one is from Adam Grant, if my memory is right. Is hit for an 8 or a 9. Don't try to hit for a 10 out of 10.
Mm.
I love
So
that.
yeah, and you said you can be some people can say, oh, you did something like it's almost perfect, but maybe because it was your best days in your best skills that it looks like it is perfect, but it's not, and it's good enough, and you didn't spend all your life doing that one. So no, good. Yeah, I like that. I mean, it goes and in terms of how would you relate to a startup or a small business case example?
Mm.
In terms of not shooting, because with the startup world and the business, we need to wear so many hats. It's
Mm.
impossible to be the best in each of them. So I think that there is a good relate, but I'm going to let you go on that, Klaus, and not steal your words.
I think when it comes to startups and to entrepreneurs, one of the risky things is to overthink. And luckily, most of us don't have that luxury because we don't have the time, we don't have the money, we don't have the team, nobody knows who we are, nobody cares. So we do a lot of experimenting. The moment you have resources, the moment you have time, the moment you have fame, the moment you have something, then you tend to start thinking. And I'll give you an example. This is not from an entrepreneurial company, but it shows what we shouldn't do, right? So I'll answer in reverse. When I was writing the book on innovation centers with my friend Brian Mattimore, we interviewed some people. We were writing about different types of innovation centers. We interviewed various people. One of the guys I interviewed had a one-man innovation center. So there's the company, there are like 20 people or so, and he was like their one-man innovation center. And he mostly did, to show that an innovation center doesn't have to be 400 people, but he mostly did client-facing projects. And one he shared with me that really stuck, it made it into the book, but it really stuck with me, was that he'd been called in by this insurance company to look at a new insurance product they were creating.
Mhm.
And they said, we've been working on developing this insurance product, this insurance package for 4 years. 4 years they've been working on creating a new insurance product, and they aimed it at people who own auto campers. And then he's brought in and he says, well, what's the first thing you would ask if somebody brought you in after 4 years? Steve, tell me what pretend you're now this guy. What would you ask as the first question? You've been brought in by me. I've been in development for 4 years. What's the first thing you ask?
Why so long?
Why so long? Good question. He said, oh yeah, that's a good question. What's question number two?
What do you want to achieve?
What do you want to achieve, right? What are you trying to do? And they're like, well, we're trying to create this. And then you ask things like, who are you doing it for? Well, we're doing it for these people with auto campers. And at some point, pretty soon, right? Maybe it's question 1, maybe it's question 5. Somebody's going to ask, what do your potential customers think of it? Because this is an insurance company. They've had many customers. They've been around for a while. And so he asked, what have these people, what have they said? What do they think about it? And then they look at each other and go, and he said, have you asked any of them? I said, well, now you put it that way, that would have been smart, right? And he said, good, let's talk again in a week. Let me ask some. So he talks to 20 of their customers who are potential buyers and say, hey, the company is considering rolling out this product. What do you think of it? They don't have to test it. Just what do you think of the idea? And then he comes back to them a week later and he says, so I've got good news and bad news. The good news is I've talked to 20 people and they all agree. The bad news, you can hear it coming. The bad news is none of them want it. And then they closed it down and they thanked him they said, thank you for using 1 week to close down what we had spent 4 years thinking about by actually testing it on the market. Not even rolling it out, just asking, would you maybe be interested? And when you are an entrepreneur, you rarely do this. Entrepreneurs, because they don't have money, they don't have time, they don't have potential customers, or they only have potential customers, they don't have any existing ones. They tend to go pretty fast through development cycles. Oh, you've got an idea? Let's try it. Oh, it didn't work? Let's try something else. Oh, it worked a little bit? Okay, let's change it. Okay, they didn't like it in black. Let's try it in blue. Okay, they liked it longer or shorter or digital or whatever it is. Okay, let's try that. And usually when you are an entrepreneur, you go through these very fast development cycles where when you are a big organization, it is so tempting to overthink, overplan, because there's so much at stake. So you're more worried about mistakes than you're worried about successes, right? Whereas an entrepreneur, nobody knows what you're doing. You can fail 100 times and nobody's going to notice because you try something else. And I think that when it comes to this getting shit done mentality, this done is better than perfect. What these insurance guys have done, they spent 4 years trying to think up the perfect product. If they had spent just a couple of days calling people and say, hey, what do you think? It's not perfect, but what do you think? Then they would have learned something very useful. For example, we don't want it. And then they could have said, oh, what do you want? Or how could we change it? Or should it be cheaper or different? Or I don't even know what the product was. It was an insurance package. But because they didn't do that, they spent 4 years thinking, 4 years trying to make it perfect instead of 1 week realizing, oh, they don't even want it done. And I think that mindset, the opposite mindset, is what you should have as an entrepreneur. Don't spend 4 years thinking up what perfect is. Get it out there, test it, try it, test it again, try it again, fail, learn, go, oh, wow, it should be different.
The way I like the entrepreneurs to be qualified, because I am one, we are entrepreneurs here, is problem solvers. In a sense that look at the problem, find a solution or partial solution, try it, bring it back to your customers who have the potential customers who have the problem, fix it for free, just test it. And this way you'll have your market because you have the nose into the market. And being an engineer, and by education and doing some engineering work a long time ago, I'm in business for almost 25 now, but 30 some years ago, I was saying that the people, I cannot know what the customers want by staying behind my desk. It's impossible. I need to be in the field. I need to understand what they do. But in that case, we didn't have the opportunity. I mean, the marketing and salespeople were kind of the gatekeepers, which was totally wrong. So different story, but something that relates to that I read about, the company Compact, or the PC company. I don't know if you recall, it's I don't know if your name still exists. They did a survey. They were asking what the people wanted in terms of computers. People said, we want to have like this amount of RAM, this CPU. It needs to be rugged. It needs to be this. And you know where I'm going, blah, 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 blah. So they listened and they watched, wow, if we build this computer, it's going to be the perfect computer and people will all buy it. And they developed this computer, like very thick and very rugged, but very heavy, very powerful. But the price was $9,000 US at that time in the 1990s.
Wow.
So you guess what happened? Nobody bought it. And the
Nobody bought it.
title of this I would say small article was "The Customers Are Not Always Right." So, I mean, in a sense that you said it could go against what you said, but it's no, because it's the engineers and the management who decided to listen to the customers, but all of them, like the entire market, the designer and the business manager and the student, and or maybe not the student, but the researcher. So, anyways, yes, perfect is not necessarily what the market wants.
I think you said something interesting there, Steve. A lot interesting, but about the compact that customers or clients or whatever you want to call them tend to be very good at understanding what their problem is. They don't necessarily know what the solutions are, right? And I'll give a very, very low key example. Not too long ago, I have a 7-year-old daughter, and not too long ago, we were at the doctor's where a nurse was going to give her a flu shot. So she gets a needle and it's stuck into the arm. And of course, she doesn't like that, because who does? I don't like that. I'm 46. She doesn't like that. She's 7. So she knows the problem is I don't like to be stuck by needles because that is painful. Now, the nurse apparently had this really smart gadget, smart, like small piece of rubbery thing with like small, tiny tips on it. So it seemed like it had 50 small tips on it. And then you press it against the shoulder where you're going to insert the needle. So the skin feels like there's 50 small, soft needles pressing against your skin. So when the real one is pressed, it's just number 51. And it means that it tricks the mind into thinking, oh, this is not painful because it's just one more of these rubbery things, where in reality, it's different, but the mind is distracted. It's a super smart, super cheap, super low key solution to the pain of being stabbed with a needle. And if you ask a 7-year-old or a 46-year-old or a 78-year-old, say, hey, do you like needles? No, they know the problem. And then if they say what the solution is, they'll say things from, oh, I need to be drunk, or I need to be sedated, or it needs to be a better needle, or I need to have it as a pill, or whatever. They have all sorts of ideas, right? Ask me about what sort of ideas I would have for not wanting to be stabbed with that needle. I have all sorts of ideas. I would never, ever have suggested that solution, even though I was very clear on what the problem was. And I work with innovation, right?
Wow.
So part of it is this. There's a nice Henry Ford quote that says that if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And your compact example is exactly that, that ask people about what the problem is, but don't ask them to provide the solution, because most of them, they think of the solution in terms of the problem. Get very clear on what the customer's problem is. Don't ask them what the solution should be. Present them with the solution. Test it on them. Try it. Ask them first, but don't ask them to come up with your solution. Ask them about the problem, and ask them until you really understand what their problem is. Because often when we say the problem is something, we mean it's something else. But the
I
solution
can.
is different.
Sorry. I mean, I can relate to that. I have a consulting firm in digital transformation. And so, to give you a very quick example, people are using files and folders for almost 30 years with Windows and Macs and everything. But when we come up with a new paradigm of having lists and columns and filtering and all these things, it's not that complicated, but they take a long time to get it. They need to be trained. They need to have to relate and say, I'm not sure about it. But they prefer to have their 6 levels of folders that nobody can find back. Even them, they cannot find their files. So there is the part of resistance to change in what I'm saying, but also that I learned that from my salesman in a different business where they don't know what they don't know. And I think it applies. I mean, I laughed when I heard that the first time. And now I'm saying it almost every week, like this week. Now it's the time I said it. Exactly. So if you ask for a solution, I mean, it's not the best person to find a solution. And if you go back to your insurance company, that's them. They were not good enough, or think about going and see the customers to test the solution they had in mind, to refine it, like in maybe 6 months, 3 months, maybe even 2 weeks. At least some tests, like fail and fail fast.
And they didn't understand the problem.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. So they didn't know, they were trying to get something out. So No, very, very interesting. I'd like to go back to, I don't know, Mo, if you can interrupt me at any time, by the way. So I have many questions, but you can jump in.
So far, I love your
Going
questions,
back to
Steve.
what I said at the beginning, the 46 books. What
Yeah.
can you elaborate a bit more about those 46 books?
So I realized I did my first book when I was 20, maybe something like that.
Wow.
I realized at some point that books are a nice vehicle for knowledge, right? A book is a gathering of knowledge that is compressed and put into a kind of an asset format, whether it's 100 pages or 200 or 300, it is contained, right? It's a little bit like if you're a musician and you do a song or piece of music, then that's a piece of music that is contained. But if you put 12 on them on a CD, then people understand, okay, in the old days, at least they would understand that is an album. That is like, now that is a piece that is contained within itself. And you can have different albums, sure, but each album is its own thing. A book has a little bit of that. Like if imagine I went to you guys, we're connected on LinkedIn, and tomorrow after this talk, I sent you a text that said, here's a tip on how to design checkout experiences. Then you're going to think, okay, well, that's a bit weird, but let's read it. Okay, that was strange, but cool enough, Klaus, I guess. And then the day after, I sent you another thing that is something about the 5 basic price modalities. And then you're thinking, okay, what's up with this guy? Why is he sending us this stuff? And then after day 3, I send you one that is about how strategic decisions are made in startups. And you're thinking, what's wrong with this dude? And at some point, you're going to write to me and say, Klaus, what the hell are you doing with this? Why are you sending us this stuff? Like, what is wrong? And then I ignore you. And on day 4, I send you something about how to give a handshake at a conference to meet strangers. And then now you're going to get to the block button, right? You're going to get to like, what is this? But now imagine that instead of that, I took all these tips that I send you once every day, and then instead I put 50 of them in a book, and I call it Klaus's 50 tips from Klaus on how to be an entrepreneur, right? Lay out it, put in a few pictures, put in forward, get somebody else to review it, and then I send it to you. And I say, hey, Steve, hey, Mo, here's a book I wrote on tips for entrepreneurs. Now you're no longer going to think I'm an idiot. You're going to think I'm a very generous human being because I wrote a book and I gave it to you, right? I gave you the gift of a book. Even better if I meet you physically. Even better if it dumps into the mail, if I print it and put it into an envelope and send it to your home addresses with a little note saying, hey, Steve, hey, Mo, I really loved our chat. Here's my newest book. I hope you find it useful. Then you're going to think, wow, this Klaus, wow, really solid guy. Oh, he knows something about entrepreneurship. Oh, this is his book number 47. Wow. I wish I could write that many books. And the reality is anybody can write that LinkedIn post. Anybody can write that one thing. Right? We all have things we know something about, whether it's Spanish churches in the 16th century or how to sell French fries in Papua New Guinea or why Japanese street racing is actually something you should know about, right? We all know stuff.
Yeah.
And we all have something in our lives, many things often that we could write 50 LinkedIn posts about, especially if somebody asked us questions. And if we take those 50 LinkedIn posts and we put them into people's faces, most people aren't going to care. It's not going to be interesting. But if we take 50 of them on one subject and we tie them together, maybe we find out after we've written our 50 that 7 of them are linked because they're about history, and 8 are about methods, and 9 are about the business side, and 4 are personal stories. Now we suddenly have chapters. And suddenly, instead of just having 50 LinkedIn posts, we now have a book. Right. So there's a methodology to the madness. And part of that is to break it down into small enough lumps of work that it makes sense. And this, I was asked many years ago by a friend, Klaus, how have you written like 27 books or whatever it was at the time? And apparently, I don't remember, but he told me later, apparently, and I was drunk at the time, and apparently I look at him and I say, one chapter at a time. Which even while drunk was
that's good.
thank you, was a pretty smart answer, because that's
Yeah, it is.
exactly the trick. Most people, when they think of books, they think of them as these like big 300-page mammoths. Where do you start? Where do you end? What goes in? What doesn't go in? Or if you do it the reverse, if you say, okay, what can I say? What is something I can write one page about? Right? Moai is an AI trainer. If I say, Mo, I want you to write one page on uh, common misunderstandings about AI. And he said, well, I could easily write 10 pages about that. Okay, give me the 10 classic misunderstandings, write one page on each. Great, now we have 10 pages. Now give me 7 tactics to overcome that. Okay, now we have 17 pages. Give me now a little bit of history of AI. Okay, well, there's the Dartmouth conference in 1956. There's ChatGPT. There's what happens between that. There's AI in computer games. Okay, write me one page about this, one page about that, one page. And suddenly at some point we start building these building blocks, these Legos, and then we decide how to put them together. And at some point, with an intro and an outro and a forward, suddenly it's a book.
That's exactly the way that I share how to approach complex projects in the high-tech world. Take the project, divide it in sub-projects, divide it again, every and single sub-projects, divide it until you understand exactly how to do that. And you have all those small pieces and bring them back together to build a complex project. So this is what I learned in 4 years in university about, at the end, this is what I learned. Try to divide to understand at your level. From that, you can rebuild everything. This is how you can think long. This is how you can build businesses. This is how you can do very complex project by dividing it until you can absorb it or your team can absorb it. So that makes total sense. And I can relate also to the LinkedIn post because I have like a few businesses and projects running in parallel. And when I post about one, I post about another one, I post about another one, for me, it makes sense because one is about awareness, the other one is about consulting, the other one is execution. But for them, it could look like exactly the first example about what you're talking about. And I feel that it could be perceived that way now. So I'm trying to gel that up a bit more. But yeah, you're right. You're right. So just doing the right package makes sense. But 46 is still very high. And on top of that, you are giving the last one. So what is this gift experiment?
So the gift experiment has it's for those curious. If you see my LinkedIn profile, you can click and read it for free. If you look at my webpage, you can read it for free. The experiment is quite simple, and that is that when you write books, there are many ways to use them. You can write, especially if you write fiction books, maybe you want people to read them. Maybe you want to make money off them. Maybe you want to demonstrate that you're good at writing, so people will hire you to do writing courses. Maybe you want to write about something so somebody will buy the rights of it and make it into a board game or a movie. Right? There are many ways of approaching how you write. That's with fiction. With nonfiction, it's an even bigger question. Right? Do you write because you want your ideas out there? Do you write because you want people to see you've made a book so they can think, "Ooh, how smart he is. He has written a book." Do you want to sell them? Do you want to give them away? Do you want them to be used for teaching? Do you want them to be something that is quotable? Do you want them to be something that is actually nobody reads them, but you serve them in these bite-sized things? Because if we say that 40 or 50 LinkedIn posts become a book, then obviously a book can also be 40 or 50 LinkedIn posts. And then you're saying, I'm sharing here some pages from my book instead of just a LinkedIn post. For me, the reason that I'm giving them away is that I think it is very hard to make a lot of money on writing business books. It's not impossible, but it is very hard. What is not very hard is writing business books as a way of spreading your ideas. And if you want your ideas to spread, then usually it's easier to get them to spread freely than if not, right? We listen to podcasts, we watch YouTube videos, we watch online documentaries, we read newspapers, all this sort of stuff. But free has a power. Free means you can give it away. And it also means that it's easier for people to give it a shot, right? Especially in this digital age of you Steve had clicked on the book and given it a read, which I really appreciate. Thank you for that. You could have bought it off Amazon. You could have waited for it to be sent home, and then you could have read it in the physical copy. And smell the printing, but then you would also spend some money and some time. Where the nice thing about free is that you can go from, hey, I'm curious, to click, and then you can see it, and then you can, it's not going to take up shelf space. It's not going to cost me money to do it. Then you can check it out. And that's also why I don't have this tactic of, oh, you don't have to give me your email, you don't have to sign up for my newsletter, which works, right? Let's not kid ourselves. These tactics work.
Mm.
But for me, I want to make it as easy as possible to get this book out. I have plenty of books, but this one is, it's not my, I don't know if it's my best book. It's one of the better ones, but it is the one that mostly speaks to what I help people with, which is getting shit done. So the more that is out there, the more people read that, the more they will either say, hey, this guy, I don't like how he thinks. And that's good, because that means they're not going to make the mistake of going to one of my events or a lecture, or they're not going to hire me because they don't like how I think. And that's perfect, because then we don't have to spend time finding that out. Or they may say, okay, this guy, I read his book. Really interesting stuff. I don't need him now. I feel I know everything I need to know, which is also good, because then I've managed to help another human being without it costing me anything. And they're not going to hire me anyway because they feel they know it all right now, which is cool. But there's also the third group, the ones that read it or parts of it and say, hey, I like how he thinks. I like his style. I like the tone. Maybe I'd like his help. And in that case, it becomes not just a piece of information, it also becomes a brand statement, and it becomes a business card. And in my experience, if enough people get your business card, well, then you're going to either have them like it and say, let me have more, or they're going to say, nah, I don't need that, or they're going to say, never this guy. And all three are okay to me. So that's why it's free.
Yeah, no, I think it's correct me if I'm wrong, but it's part of a personal branding in that case. Even the experiment itself tells about your creativity, your risk taking philosophy or approach in general, and obviously the getting the shit done, which is the most important one. So, well, what are the if I may ask also about the one that if people want to hire you, what is the what is your pitch, your quick pitch about it? And we didn't talk about that with you. We were just asking because what are you doing that makes you a living, and what's your most interesting projects these days?
So I do three things that bring in money. One is I do a lot of keynote speaking. I stand on a lot of stages. Some of them are digital, but a lot of them are physical, right? So I go to events, I stand on a stage, and I talk in front of 100 or 200 or 800 people or however many, about mostly about getting shit done, but sometimes about other things. So that's one thing, is like I am a professional keynote speaker, and I do that around the world, mostly Europe and the US, but I've stood on stages in India, right? So that counts a little as well. So that's the one thing. The second is I do the College of Extraordinary Experiences, where I'm one of the three partners, and this is our own event. So all the stuff that I think is annoying at other people's events, or why don't you try this? Well, we run an event where we can do whatever we want, as long as people are still interested. And the college is that. So that's my own company, our own thing, that where we get to experiment and go crazy and do things where there we sell tickets to the event. So that's the second thing, is running the college. The third is consulting projects, and they can range from being supporting as like a strategic partner to a startup, or they can be to a bigger company running some projects for them. For example, currently I'm helping an Indian management school that is in development. And they pulled me in and said, hey, Klaus, we'd like you to be part of this project. And I said, great. So that's why I was just in Mumbai here recently, because of that project. And that means that usually when people hire me, it comes in one of three buckets, also financial. The first one is the big players. That's usually easy. They usually have some money. They know what they want. They want to talk, or a workshop, or like a training for their sales team, or strategic advice for their leadership over a period of time. And they have some money, and they pay for that, and everybody's happy. That's usually pretty simple. The nice thing about them is they have budgets, they know what they want. The annoying thing is it takes a long time, both to land the deals and to get paid. And the impact I can have is usually minimal,
Yeah.
right? I may be called out to do a talk in front of 500 employees, but it's rare that the CEO afterwards says, and I'd like to spend an hour with you every week. Rare, not impossible, but rare. So that's the one. The second is the startups. They're also easy because they just pay me a percentage of their revenue, and I help them with strategic advice, with internal training, with kind of getting it over the ramp, with getting shit done.
Yeah.
Right? Having somebody who's been there before, somebody who's taken a couple of journeys, somebody who's reasonably good at turning stories and experiences and theory into actionable advice is worth solid gold.
Yeah.
Looking back, I was an idiot for not making use of that. I had people offering that, right? I was an idiot for not taking their advice when I was building my own company. And if I'd done more on the mentoring side, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have ended as badly as it did with me crashing. So that advisory piece is something I do with startups, and then with scale ups that are sort of in the middle, it's a mixed piece, right? So they don't necessarily pay part of their revenue, but they pay part of their growth revenue and some sort of monthly fee to have me on board. Not an hourly thing, but like to have access to being able to call me. And again, whether they want strategic advice, they want help with something specific, they want me to coach some team members, we figure that out. And the way the money side of that works is to say, hey, what are you comfortable with? And then we work with that. Because I find that companies tend to be individual beasts, right? I could say I charge $800 an hour or whatever it is that I think would be an hourly wage that's interesting. But is it better if it's 2 hours? Well, if we're moving boxes, then sure. Right? Will this podcast, will it be better if we do 6 hours? Probably not. Will it be better if it's 2 minutes? Probably not. Right? So again, time is not really a good way to judge these things, especially if it's idea work, advisory work, creative work. Some things where you can solve something that is worth millions in 2 minutes, and some things where you can have an 8-hour conversation that ends with somebody saying, yeah, so we tried that and that didn't go anywhere. So I find it generally silly for this sort of strategic work that I do most of to get paid by the hour or by the day. If people insist, I will let them pay me that way, but I'm rather expensive. But I'd rather have them pay me out of what is there.
Interesting.
Wow. With my consulting business, same thing. I was talking to a partner on a project, and I said, no, working by the hour doesn't make sense because the experience that we're bringing, as you said, we can find a solution in 2 minutes. Your innovation guy that you brought up like a few minutes ago, the guy asked one question kind of, and after a week, it kills the 4-year project in a good way. So yeah, this is why for me it's value, 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 and same thing for this podcast, same thing for everything else. So no, we think the same, Klaus. It's that's the best approach in my opinion. And if they don't understand the value, I mean, again, it goes back to okay, it's not our customers, or there is
Absolutely.
no fit, and that's it. So we need to assume it. So, and Mo, you wanted to talk about something?
Absolutely. I just have a question about perhaps the startup, or how did you come up with the idea, or what pushed you perhaps in your life to pick the entrepreneurship life cycle and be an entrepreneur? Because your personality is very creative. You're a very innovative individual, and I would love to pick your brain to understand your why. What pushed you to this path? And I'm so happy you're doing great because you look like you're enjoying it. Like every time that you speak about one of your companies, your face, you're just positive. It's a love story. I would love to know what happened.
Thank you for that. Part of what happened was that I failed.
Got
So
it.
that's a good way to start. When I left high school at age 19, I went directly to the university to study philosophy and history. And I thought I was going to be a high school teacher. I thought I was going to be done with my master's degree when I was like 25 or so. And then I was going to be a high school teacher. And I was really looking forward to that because I enjoyed teaching and already then did some youth school teaching and really enjoyed that. So I thought that was going to be the career path. And then I went to the university and I studied, and I found that while I liked the idea of standing in a classroom and teaching, I didn't really enjoy the university that much. I found it okay, but it didn't really pull me in. And philosophy was, while interesting, a little bit too far from reality for my tastes. So I left the university after about a year. And then I did a year of like working with kids and making a bit of money and kind of taking a break from studying. And then I realized I really needed an education because I would like to have nicer jobs than this. So I really need
So,
to go back to school.
yeah.
And I applied again. And the reason I tell this in detail is because there's a fun fact coming up here, and it shows a lot about me.
Take
That
your
I
time.
applied again to the university to study philosophy once again, same university, same place, just reapplying. This was in 2000. And then I got a letter that said, "Dear Mr. Klaus, you have not been accepted." And I thought, oh, damn, what am I going to do now? It
Wow.
said, "Because you are already studying here."
Whoa.
I never quit. I just stopped going. So I was still inscribed, and somebody at that admin office had thought, who is this idiot? Like, he's studying here, he's applying to study here. What is wrong with young people? So I went back and I did a few more years. I passed a couple of exams, and then I failed some exams, or I failed one exam. So now I was behind, and I needed to either get a bit more serious about my studies because I ran out of stipend money in 2002, or I needed to do something else. And then
Mm.
I was doing it, uh, teaching youth school classes in live action role play, my passion and hobby. And I thought maybe I could make a living out of that. Maybe I could earn money enough to just scrape by doing that. And that was in October 2002. It's one of the best decisions I've ever made. And that was my early attempts at entrepreneurship. It was before I had a company. I was working mainly through nonprofits, but I was kind of creating my own thing. And a couple of years later, I ended up creating a company with my brother, who didn't know anything about the role playing, but knew something about getting shit done. And we teamed up and created what would end up down the line would become the world's largest live action role play company many years later. But that I started with my brother in 2006. And the longer I kept on doing that, like living that, I'm not going to call it living the dream, but at least doing something which I really enjoyed and where I was motivated not by money, but by the work itself and by the impact it had. It didn't matter that there wasn't a lot of money. And we slowly got better at it. We slowly grew. We slowly learned how to do things. My brother left to do other stuff because there was not enough money for him. He had higher ambitions. I brought in a partner. We slowly built it and ended up finding at some point it tipped over to where for many years we were in that position where we could quit the entrepreneurial thing and go out and get lowly paid jobs, and then at least we would make a living.
Mm.
And at some point it tipped. That is now many years ago where it tipped from now. If I left this, then I would not only go out and do something I enjoyed less, I would have a lot less freedom. I would have a lot less flexibility and a lot less passion, even in an interesting job. I would also get paid less. And since then, it was quite easy, right? So every time I now think of should I go have a job, well, it's probably going to mean I make a lot less money. I have a lot less freedom. I have, even though it's something I might be passionate about, it's going to be hard to beat what I do now. I'm going to have to play by somebody else's rules. So it's gotten harder and harder to see to see the job instead of the entrepreneurial career. And what started it was that passion. That I
Mm.
think that becoming an entrepreneur because you want to make money is that's cool, right? If people want to do that. The hard thing about it is that if it turns out it doesn't work, then it's going to be really hard. Becoming an entrepreneur because you're passionate about it, because it gets you excited, then even if it fails on the economic side, and boy, did this fail, then you're still going to be excited about doing it, right? It's like going to the gym to lose weight. If you go to the gym to lose weight, if you lose weight, you're happy. If you don't lose weight, then it's going to be really tough to keep motivation going. If you go to the gym because you enjoy it, right? You really like lifting weights or talking to people or running on the treadmill or whatever it is, then at some point, if it fails, you're still going to have a good time.
Mm.
And if it works well, then you're also going to lose weight. So for me, I think that what led me to become an entrepreneur was that I got to do stuff that I really enjoyed. And there was just enough money to keep me going. And since I wasn't doing it for the money, even a little money was enough. Where if I'd gone out and become a bricklayer or a school teacher, which I might have enjoyed,
Yeah.
especially the school teaching, then I think the money would have played a bigger part. Where here, the money was a small part. And that meant I was okay with small money for many years.
We
Wow.
hear often entrepreneurs saying, example, you ask them, how are your company going? Oh, we have a blast, we have fun, it's going well. And if you have the question, are you making any money? Oh, we have fun, we have a blast, it's going.
They avoid the question.
That's right, because they are in the field that they like, they are passionate about it.
Yeah.
And again, we have to be careful. I mean, passion is great for the business, but at the same time, we have to find the right balance. Anyway, so that's now that's very interesting. So if you keep the entrepreneurship topic and we go with getting the shit done and ship, like Seth Godin says, and you say, how in a startup, how they can know that it's not half-baked product. How do they know that their minimum viable product, their MVP, is at the right level without cutting the corners too much, but just enough to get the thing ready in the end? So what's your approach in terms of, thinking more about a product? That could be a service, Klaus, whatever you want, but how they make sure it's not half-baked before it's out by getting your shit done and be in a mode that let's ship.
Well, start with it being half-baked.
Interesting.
That's the simplest thing I can say. And I'm going to quote my daughter on this, because when I was finishing the book, I went into the living room and I said, Saga, I'm writing a book about getting shit done. If you had to give a piece of advice for people out there about getting shit done, what would it be? And then first she said some sort of nonsense because she was 6 years old. So he was like, blah, blah, blah. And then she said, no, I've got it now. And what she said ended up in the book. I'm going to quote directly from that. She said, if you want to get some shit done and you don't know how to do it, then don't do it, but get some other shit done. That will teach you new skills, and maybe now you can get the first shit done.
Very nice. Wow.
And that means start with it half-baked. If you don't know how to do an MVP that's good enough, then do an MVP that's not good enough, because that will teach you something about doing an MVP that will probably mean your next MVP is going to be better. And that'll teach you something that means the next one is probably going to be better. And there's a thing about entrepreneurs that nobody knows us, nobody cares, nobody is like, nobody expects anything. And there is a weakness in that, because it means we have no budget, we have no understanding, we have no network, we have no fame. We're like, we can do the greatest thing in the world and nobody's going to care or notice. However, there's also a strength. And that strength is that if we do something terrible, very few people are going to care. And we're going to learn something from that, right? So if we can get past that rejection phase, or the phase where we suck, then we can get to the phase where we get better. But it's really hard to do that without going through that terrible phase. And as an entrepreneur, you have the advantage that people don't care. If you're Coca-Cola and you put out a new Coke, oh, wait a minute, they did that in the 1980s and we're still talking about it, right?
Yeah.
Coca-Cola put out a failed product launch in the 1980s and we still talk about it. Let that sink in for a moment.
Yeah.
Now consider that Mo goes out and says to 5 friends, hey guys, I'm considering doing this thing. Can I try it on you? And they said, sure. And afterwards they say, Mo, that sucked. And he said, okay, sorry guys, it was an experiment. Can I try it again? And some of them are going to say, yeah, come back when you've changed it.
Yeah.
And some of them are going to say, never speak to me again.
They block.
But
They block
even
me.
if that happens, nobody's going to talk about it 40 years from now. Probably those friends are going to forgive him. And people who weren't at that meeting aren't going to notice. And what that means is that we're so afraid as entrepreneurs to burn our bridges. But the reality is there's so many bridges out there that if I go on this podcast right now with you lovely people and I just shit all over the place, right? I am terrible. You're thinking we will never invite this guy back. What the hell were we thinking? Like, why? We've never had such a bad guest. This was the worst ever. Yes, I will have burned a bridge. That is sad. But is it going to mean that I lose all my customers? No. Is it going to mean that most people are never going to hear about it? Most people are never going to know. If you are Coca-Cola, if you are Cristiano Ronaldo, if you are Ferrari, yes, then maybe test it a couple of times before you roll it out of the garage, because it's going to be in newspapers when the new Ferrari fails and the engine explodes. But when we're us, use that weakness to your advantage. Use that, since nobody cares, you can get away with half-assed. You can get away with half-baked. And then
Wow.
it's going to learn you to make it better next time.
If you make a link with your insurance company spending 4 years, and the philosophy of doing half-bake, and the fact that you need to show that to the customers, they're half-baked, and they don't know what they don't know, so the customers is not good at finding solutions. You put these three concepts together, and you say, okay, if you have a half-baked product, put it in front of the customers, and you get a lot of information. So I'm saying the same thing you said in different words, but making the link with everything we discussed in the beginning, because it all makes sense. It's all working very, very well together. So before talking about different topic, Mo, do you have a specific question about the all these things about getting the shit done for our audience?
Absolutely, absolutely. The question that I have is a little bit creative. I think you're gonna like it. I just want to ask you something. What is an advice that you could give to anybody that is starting a new venture that is not available out there in the internet? That is not a typical just work hard, push forward, something controversial that people don't talk about that you would give even to yourself if you can go 30 years from now. In the past, by the way.
Yes.
So I'll give you two. And
Oh, let's go. Thank you, brother.
One is something that other people say as well, but I think isn't being said enough.
All right.
Perfectionism is the enemy. Perfectionism is not your friend, and not being a perfectionist doesn't mean you can't do good stuff. It means that you can accept when you do things that are half-baked.
Yeah.
And not being a perfectionist is one of my superpowers.
Wow.
It's one of the things that allows me to get stuff done, some of it at a low level, some of it at a very high level. But it allows me to get stuff done because I'm not fighting myself. So that is other people say that as well, but that is the one. One thing that I will say that is slightly more controversial, and very few people say, it's in one of my other books, by the way, is that imposter syndrome is arrogant. That you cannot have imposter syndrome if you don't have a hidden level of arrogance. And I'll tell you why. I usually say that imposter syndrome and narcissism are two sides of the same coin. If you're a narcissist, you think you're the best at everything, even though you're obviously not, right? We have one in the White House in the US right now, where the amount of clips where he says, nobody knows as much as me, and I'm the best at everything. And it's obviously not true, right? When you are a narcissist, you cannot see yourself realistically, and you think you are better than you actually are. When you have imposter syndrome, you also cannot see yourself realistically, and you think you are worse than you are. And of course, one is nicer than the other, but what they have in common is there is an arrogance underneath it. And the narcissist doesn't care about being arrogant, but usually people with imposter syndrome, they don't want to be arrogant. But if we take you for a moment, Mo, and you say, I don't know if you suffer from imposter syndrome, but let's say we do for a moment. Let's say that this is something you struggle with, and you say, yes, I'm often in places where everybody says I'm great, and I know I'm not, and they don't know how it could have been, and they don't know how close I was to failing, and blah, 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 all the normal crap. If you have imposter syndrome, you will be able to take 100 people who say you're brilliant, whether it's at cooking food or doing presentations or doing technical trainings on AI, and they will say you're brilliant, and you'll say, no, I'm not, because you know it could have been better. You know that you fail at this, or you forgot that, or in reality, they don't know what they're talking about. And the arrogance of you saying these 100 people are wrong, I know better. That's bloody arrogant. You cannot have imposter syndrome unless you also have a hidden arrogance, because at its core is saying, all of you who are saying I'm good, you're wrong. I know better.
Interesting.
That's
And a lot of
interesting.
people who have imposter
Wow.
syndrome, have this humbleness, right? This, oh, but it's me being humble. It's me being not putting myself out there. And then say, okay, then why do you think you're smarter than us? Oh, but I don't think I'm smarter than you. Okay. I say you're brilliant. I'm an expert. I know this. If I say you're a good public speaker, I've been teaching public speaking for 25 years. I'm recognized as being very good at it. My word has a bit of weight in this matter. If I say you're good, why do you trust yourself more than me?
Hmm. Interesting.
Oh no,
That's
but I know
okay.
I'm bad. Aha. So you're saying, and it's not just me, it's these other 10 people who also say it, who you also trust, and still you don't believe us because you know that you almost threw up before you went on stage, and you know that you forgot the thing, and you know that you look better when you were 26, or you know, whatever it is you're telling yourself, right?
Let's go,
It's
brother.
this having access to backstage information and thinking, oh, but it could have been better. And I know that I know what they don't know is that I don't know anything and I'm insecure. Like, yeah, but we don't see that. So that's the thing that's slightly controversial is that imposter syndrome has a certain level of hidden arrogance to it. And to
Mhm.
me, that's usually been a key when I help people deal with their imposter syndrome, getting them to understand that arrogance because most of them don't want to have that arrogance.
Interesting
Interesting.
angle, Klaus. Very interesting. I think I'm
Wow.
gonna keep thinking about it all night long.
Me too, man. Me too. It's like,
But
wow.
no, that's seriously. I like the approach, and but first it makes sense, and second, I never thought about that this way because, as you said, when it's more noble, we don't think to look underneath where it comes from, and there is some of arrogance and in some cases some perfectionism as well, saying that I can do better, better, better. So what you
Bingo.
say is wrong. I can be better than this. So the arrogance, obviously, there because you talk about it, and perhaps some perfectionism for some of them. So interesting. Okay, so maybe before wrapping this up, one big thing is something you're doing since 2017, if my memory is right. We talked about it off record, the College of Extraordinary Experiences. Can you explain more what it is and if the people would like to join, participate in different roles? So go ahead with your best pitch.
I'll be a little bit secretive about it instead.
Okay,
I'll
this is what I
say,
was asking. I wasn't sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll
Go
say
with
that
what you want.
I'll say the College of Extraordinary Experiences. If this conversation in any way intrigues you, if that name sounds interesting, then go to extraordinary.college and take a look. And if you think that I'm just full of shit, that's totally okay. Then don't go there. Then you probably won't like that. And if you think that something dealing with extraordinary experiences doesn't sound interesting to you, don't go there. But if you're just a little bit curious, extraordinary.college will take you down the rabbit hole.
Mm.
And if not, totally understandable.
But I told Mo about the name. I said the name is clear.
Yeah,
I like the name.
I love the name, man.
No fluffing, no nothing. So
To
and
the point.
I I think that creating some magic around it, that's a good way. And we looked at the website, obviously. So we invite everybody to
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 do
look at
it.
the website and see what it is. And if they want to join, I saw some. I won't mention things that you don't want, but I saw different ways of getting there if they want to that are very very I would say open. It this way.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it more than you did. So. Mo, the last word about or a question to wrap this up.
Maybe the last question would be the following. So I know a lot of my friends and my colleagues who are dealing with failed ventures. So they have an idea, they failed the first time, they failed the second time, they failed the third time. Klaus, when do you think it's a good idea to go back to the marketplace and work full time for a company? When do you think it's a good idea for an entrepreneur to just give it up, or it's never a good idea to give it up and just keep going?
I think it's a good idea to give it up when the desperation doesn't feed you, but
Mm,
drains you,
mm,
right? That I am lucky enough to be born in a country, Denmark, that has free healthcare,
yeah.
which means that no matter how bad my job situation gets, I can still go to the hospital if my leg is broken or if I get sick. That is a tremendous privilege just because I've been lucky. I also live in a country that has a strong social security net. So even with massive debt, even if I'd ended up going bankrupt, I never have. My company went bankrupt, but I've never gone personally bankrupt. I've managed to talk to all my creditors on going bust. But even if I had, I could still have a good life because I live in a system where that is possible. But if I didn't, then I would have taken less risks.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that there's risk is something that makes you innovate. It makes you think bigger. It makes you take more chances, but it's also draining. It's
Mm-hmm.
also exhausting, right? That if you want to have new ideas, well, then just set your house on fire. You're going to think very fast. But I don't suggest setting your house on fire to deal with your life. I'm saying that if it goes on fire
We'll
anyway,
put a
then
disclaimer, Klaus, in
Don't
the
worry,
podcast.
Klaus. We got the disclaimer.
if your
Yeah, no,
house is on fire, use it, right? But don't set it on fire yourself. And I think part of that is when you give up is when you find that you are more drained by desperation than
Yes.
you are empowered by it.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's time to go for some more stability because it's exhausting. And I don't think I would have dared to gamble as much as I did if I hadn't lived in a country with free healthcare, if I hadn't had a social security net as strong as the Danish one is.
Yeah.
Then I think I would have gambled a lot less.
Laos, beautiful country, by the way. Love Denmark. What a great country and the kindest people in the world. I was there for 3 years. The way that they treated me with kindness, with open heart. I love your people and I love your country, man. I think that's amazing. So if there is no perhaps safety in it, you should think about maybe going for a job or it. So maybe the environment. It depends on the environment. If the person, let's say, is struggling financially and it's not working and things are piling up, maybe you should get that job, man. And I agree with you. I agree with you, brother. All right. That would be it for me. Any last words, Steve?
No, just thank you very much for your generosity on this
Thank
call,
you.
Klaus. And I guess that people heard a lot about the way you think. You have a different angle on different things, which I really appreciate myself. And I would like to have a glass of wine with you virtually or in person and talk about different things if you're drinking wine, obviously, or whatever you want, or nothing.
Let's see if that happens in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
and
Klaus.
hopefully we'll meet in person sooner and later.
Pleasure, guys.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye-bye.